Hello there and welcome to this joint digital discussion. The future of technology is the future of humanity. So for those who didn't attend yesterday, my name is Jennifer Camfor and I'm on the marketing team here at BlueVenn. So lovely to meet you. And for everyone else, big welcome back. Now this session is going to be a bit different to the others that join, but I can promise that it will leave you thinking deeply about not only your relationships with your customers, but perhaps the relationships you have with your family and friends too. So remember, please send over any questions that you have throughout the session and we'll answer them along the way if we can, depending on how we go, or we'll cover them at the end. So at BlueVenn, through data and technology, we're disrupting how marketers are interacting with their customers and flipping the idea of customer journeys on its head. As you may have heard this morning from the first presentation of the day, the old linear path of customer journeys from awareness to advocacy is no longer relevant. With Twitter and Facebook, Instagram and many more apps at the tip of your fingers, we can advocate items before we've even bought them. So today we'll be looking at the future of technology and how this affects marketers. The first person joining us today is someone that is no stranger to social media. She's also a New York Times best-selling author with Renegades Write the Rules and has been rated as third most powerful woman on Twitter by Forbes. During her career, she has also worked with world-renowned brands such as Hilton Worldwide, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Shaquille O'Neal to successfully humanize their presence on social media. She is also the host of the Why Not Now podcast, which is available on iTunes and all other podcast platforms. It is my greatest pleasure to introduce to you Amy Jo Martin. So a big thank you, Amy Jo, for being part of the session today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic. And also joining us on the virtual couch today is one of the top 100 data influencers in the UK as rated by Data IQ in 2017. He has over 30 years experience at the forefront of database and analytics marketing, and we're also proud to have him as our chairman at BlueVenn. It's Iain Lovatt. So thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be with us, Iain.
No, thank you very much for having me along here. I'm really pleased and I'm going to be very excited to hear what Amy Jo has to say because she's been working with some really wonderful people. I mean, Dwayne "The Rock", I think he's the highest paid actor in Hollywood right now, and Shaquille O'Neal, one of the greatest American basketball players. So I'm really pleased to see how they use social media and data to improve their social standing.
Perfect. So like Iain said, Amy Jo, you've had an incredible career so far and worked with some unbelievable celebrities and brands along the way. You're clearly a pioneer of social communication and a renegade, of course. And most recently, you've been involved in some very interesting research relating to the effects of social media on human behaviours. So perhaps we could start off with yourself sharing some of this research with us.
Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to share. So the genesis of the research was really out of curiosity after working in the social media space for the past 10 years or so, if not a little bit longer, and witnessing the evolution of human behavior. Obviously, we've seen a lot of changes in the platforms and how the technology works. But I was most interested in the shift I've witnessed in consumers and fans and even marketers. And so I started getting really curious. And this was around the political season about a year ago in the United States when I noticed quite a bit of what I call online dissonance and negativity. And we've all witnessed that within our own feeds. And I started to think about what I've seen with clients in the past and what I've seen with campaigns. And I wondered, can we open source generosity using social media? So what does that mean? What I was really wondering is, can we spread and scale acts of kindness? And that led me on this journey. And I'm not a scientist, but I was able to sync up with a legitimate, really wonderful scientist. His name is Dr. Iain. But before I go there, what I started doing is I learned a little bit more about serotonin. And very simply, what serotonin does is if you do something nice to me, you get a hit of serotonin, and so do I as the recipient. But so does everyone else who witnesses that act. So when we take that concept and apply it online, the potential for spread and impacting many, many people is almost infinite. Well, 3 billion people, because there could be that many people witnessing potentially. So in reality, the point is it can just spread very quickly. So I started to do some really just kind of down and dirty experiments on my own, and that was doing things like asking my Twitter following, which I have about 1 million people following me on Twitter. I would just say, hi, is there anything I can do to help you today? I have a few minutes free, and seeing what would happen. And then taking this concept also to Facebook and doing a couple of tweaks to get the message clear of what we needed to do to keep the algorithm happy. Like this post, comment and share if there's something you could use help with, and look through and see if there's anyone you could help yourself. And so that activity kept the algorithms happy and kept the post up high in the feed and active. And this very kind of solo research study on my end was incredible, and it encouraged me to actually seek out a more clinical study, because the response was really fascinating to see how many people wanted to help other people. And some people didn't even have anything they wanted to ask of me, but they did say, you know, that made me feel good, so thanks for asking. And then you have all these people witnessing that you can't really account for. So then what we did is I found a scientist that I collaborated with, and his name is Dr. Iain. He's a brilliant researcher and a well-known doctor, and he helped me put together the methodology of how to actually add some legitimacy to my study, and also the kind of hunch and theory that I had between the fact that we could spread serotonin online. So first he explained to me it's very difficult to measure serotonin unless you're in lab. So what we did is we kind of reframed and said, can we measure acts of kindness? And sometimes when you use that word kindness online, it is a little bit dismissed in terms of people just thinking scientific. But this is a clinical research study. So what we did is we reached out and I asked my audience, does anyone want to participate in a study? It's for the greater good of the internet and human behavior and its impact on technology, but I can't tell you exactly what it is. And it will be a really limited amount of time that we need from you. So 500 people raised their hands and said, yes, I will do this. I will participate, even though they had no idea what this was about. We took those 500 people, split them up randomly, and put them in one of two different sets. We had an intervention set and a control set. So these two different groups of people were placed into private Facebook groups that we created. So they had no idea, again, what this was about, but for the next 5 days, the intervention group, we exposed them, to those people in that group, those 250 people, to various acts of kindness. So they would see content like people helping one another. An example would be, I was in line at the grocery store with a huge cart for groceries, and I let someone go in front of me who only had 2 items. So that's the type of posts that were being, and then, you know, more positive acts of kindness types of content. Then the control group was exposed to completely neutral content. It was quite boring, and we intended it to be that way. So they were very confused as to what is this study about. Then we tracked the level of good deeds the participants were doing in the real world, and the physical world over those 5 days. And we did this by doing a questionnaire at the end of each day, and the questionnaire was the same with red herrings. So just by even answering these questions, you didn't know what you were being studied about. Over 5 days, we found that the proportion of people in the intervention group who reported they did good deeds increased 10% compared to the control group. So this was just a couple of days. And actually, this happened within 3 days. And so can you imagine what could happen over an extended period of time, and the impact that we can have? And so what I took from the preliminary results was what we post online, every photo, every image, comment, it's impacting not just how we feel, but it's impacting what we do offline. So this is a time when the virtual world and the physical world are completely colliding and impacting our behavior from one to the other. And so this is an ongoing journey, and by no means is the research done, but it was covered in a Time magazine cover article. And what I thought was interesting was there's so much research being done about trolls and negative behavior online, but what about that pro-social behavior? And why wouldn't we want to research and have more impact in this space? Because we're spending so much of our time on the internet, in social media, and we wouldn't litter in the physical world. Why would we litter in our online environment? So I'll stop and pause there for you, but that's a gist of what the study was about.
Well, that's really interesting because, Joe, I was, as you were talking now, I was writing things down, and I wrote something down that my wife told me about Facebook, and it says that it will know you better than your partner after 300 likes.
Wow. So
if you like 300 things on Facebook, Facebook will know you better than your life partner. And I think that's the thing we have to consider, is the ethics of data that we give up and we share is to its impact on others. I think we're at threat sometimes from all the data that is available and how we share it to create unintentional consequences. I mean, young girls and young boys and people want to post on social media that they're having a good time. So they're constantly posting pictures of themselves in the right pose, drinking the right drinks in the right places, going to the right concerts. And the reality is that's just a snapshot of their lives. But to the audience that are seeing these messages, it creates a deeply disturbing lack of self-worth or value and depression in the people watching their friends, because they maybe don't feel that they have such a good life, that someone else is having a better time than me. Because we are really influenced by what we see and what we interact with. The friends we keep can moderate and change our behaviors. You know, we get what we get because we do as we do is really one of those trite sayings I use, but because we keep on posting on social media and giving our data up, are we giving away our emotions and freedom to others? Because it magnifies behaviors, it exaggerates behaviors, or people take those behaviors as being the totality of our life, and actually they're just a small part of our daily grind of getting out of bed and looking after children and taking children to school and dealing with work and horrible bosses. And the 2 minutes of I'm sitting having a nice drink in a bar or talking to somebody is just a really tiny piece of my life.
I I completely agree, Ian. And I think it's a really important point. Linking up the physical world and the virtual world. What is reality? Amy Jo, I know that you've done quite a lot of work on this actually with your random acts of shackness. I think that links in quite well with this. Could you give the audience a bit of an overview of what you did with that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, when we start to play with that bridge between the physical world and the virtual world, to me it gets very exciting, but it also has its dangers as well, as you mentioned, Ian, and random acts of shackness. So I started working with Shaquille O'Neal when I worked for the Phoenix Suns in the National Basketball Association here in the United States, and he wanted to get onto Twitter. And so I got this phone call one day from the locker room, and they said, can you come down and teach Shaquille O'Neal how to tweet? And I said, well, sure. And they said, well, no one else in this building really knows what Twitter is or what it means, so we don't know how to teach him. So I went down, I taught him, and we developed this rapport, and what we found quickly was that fans didn't believe it was him behind this technology, these 140 characters. And he had imposters, so it's fair to say that there was question. So I thought, well, what if we bridged the virtual world and the physical world, and we proved to fans that this is you, Shaquille, and he's up for anything. And thank goodness that there was no one else really involved, because I think someone would have stopped us. And so we decided, I came up with this zany, kind of out there, bizarre idea to call it random acts of shackness. Anyone that knows Shaquille O'Neal knows that he is like a big kid, and he loves to make people laugh. So I suggested we bring him to life on Twitter and then YouTube and Facebook. And so what I said is, what if we tweet your exact whereabouts and tell fans where you are so they can come and see you and physically see you themselves? And not only that, why don't we tweet your street corner whereabouts and I'll take photos, or we'll have proof that we can hyper syndicate on Facebook and video on YouTube. And this was before Instagram, but he was up for it. So we did just that, and his first tweet was something like, I'm on the corner of this street and this street in Phoenix, Arizona. The first person to touch me gets tickets to the basketball game tonight. And what happened next was we realized there's some magic in bringing social media to life, and people did come and meet him, and then hundreds of people would come, and then the media came and showed up, and he proceeded to do these random acts of shackness across the nation as he was traveling to play during the season. And it was magic. It was pure magic. And we saw that what happened was not just basketball fans started to want to meet Shaquille O'Neal, but he was able to transcend his own established brand as a NBA All-Star. He was at the twilight of his career anyway, really, for basketball, but people from Australia would be tweeting and reaching out saying, this guy's just funny, and I don't really like basketball, but he was able to grow his fan base exponentially because he was being relatable and accessible. So that was random acts of shackness, and since then we've seen many brands and many celebrities, do similar stunts, and it also, I would venture to say, it did spread, serotonin, or at least other acts of kindness.
Absolutely. So, Ian, how do you think marketers can take this idea of causing a reaction through social media and create revenue from that?
Jen, that was a good word you used there, reaction. Okay, because I think marketing has had a history of being reactive to people, and social media has an element of being reactive. And I think the random acts of shackness show that if you're proactive, if If you take things out there, you take differences out there, you can make differences. You can create your own channel. And I think if businesses start to segment their databases, there's a lot of information, there's tons of information that we're buying, who's bought what product, where did they buy it, what channels did they use to buy it on, how they use it. They use that information and use that proactively in their social media activity. I mean, Facebook has all sorts of tools now to enable you to identify people who are buying, using, or experiencing your products. And if you take that proactively to people and create events that can't be copied or involve personal contact on a one-to-one basis, first 50 people into my store on Monday morning that respond to this Twitter feed get free tickets for the game tonight, if there's a big game going on in town in terms of basketball, will create loyalty amongst your customers. It doesn't necessarily need to be a total everybody in Twitter sphere can see. It can be targeted just at your customers, and then it could just be targeted segments of your customers, so you can appeal to different groups at different times. And I think it's using the data you have and being, because we can communicate with everybody very cheaply, and because we can do it doesn't mean to say we should, because that's treating everybody the same. And we all like to be different. We all like to dress in different clothes. We all like to wear our hair differently. We all like to listen to different music. And although there might only be 300 likes between knowing me better than my life partner, that difference is important to me as a person. If we use that information to create differences and to use those differences to create communications that are proactive, then I think we can create stronger personal relationships with our customers.
Absolutely. And how do you think, Amy Jo, that brands make sure that they stay kind of authentic and genuine, and how do brands humanize their social media presence?
That's a great question, and I think it's over time, we've behaved differently as marketers, as brands in the social space. I think in the beginning it was, what is this and how can we use it effectively? And then I think we've somewhat slipped into our old ways of traditional marketing, where you see the polished, high production videos and hero shots, and sometimes I think that perfect image and static image starts to elbow out the real alive brand and the humans behind the brand. So one way, in my opinion, is to look at communication and try to remember that social media is really not media. It's communication. And that's a very basic statement, but when we're humans, we connect with people. People connect with people. It's difficult to have a conversation with the logo, or the people behind the logos, absolutely. So, looking at executives and the thought leaders behind a brand or industry, trying to really encourage them to be human and not be talking heads or scripted individuals, especially during, PR crisis situations. We see a lot of times, the legal tweet sent out after a big debacle with an airline or something. And sometimes that does more harm than it does good, rather than showing up and having compassion, just as you would in the real world. I think on the flip side, the positive thing that brands can really do to kind of tackle and leverage this idea of spreading serotonin or kindness online, good behavior online, is kind of thinking about brand altruism and, the value proposition. How can you, charge your strategy team or your agency with finding a way to bake serotonin into the delivery, into that value exchange? So rather than just dismissing acts of good and goodwill to a the foundation side of the business or charitable efforts, really owning that within marketing and branding and seeing that as a culture shift inside and out. It's not about a divided company with different buckets that need to be responsible. This is a culture move. So imagining how you can be in the intersection between, that serotonin exchange and leveraging your influence and power that brands have. So it's a fun, creative question, I believe, to think about, because that surprise and delight feeling goes a long way with consumers.
Absolutely, Amy Jo, absolutely. And Iain, where does this leave, the AI algorithms and chatbots with collecting all of this data and brands continuously trying to keep authentic online? Where do we go with, what's to come in the future?
Well, I think we're seeing, they say that the military tends to get ahead of us in so many ways. And I think we're seeing with the current news stories on chatbots being used in influencing elections intensely within the last 24 hours. It's not a long build-up. They were intensely used in the last 24 hours. So I think the situation we find ourselves in is that people will be reaching, a lot of businesses will be reaching for more of these things in the future. But we need to ensure that when we're programming them or asking them to run campaigns for us, that they're also programmed to build in, as Amy Jo would say, the serotonin. Because it's very easy for a tool to be used for both good and evil, if you look at it in those ways. Some people would regard capitalism as an evil, but fundamentally, if we take business as being good and war as being bad, having seen the influence of the chatbots on elections, we want to use that with baked-in serotonin, I think was the phrase that Amy Jo used. I think we need to bake that into our marketing. People like Tom's Shoes, they, if I remember correctly, offer to donate a free pair of shoes to people in Africa for every pair of shoes that are bought. That's a commitment that a company's making that makes people who buy them feel good. And people who buy them can buy into them. And the younger generation, and I'm an old man now, so I'm at the baby boomer sort of stage, last drip of that going through. But my children look at things like, well, I'm going to buy my clothes in charity shops because I don't want to be consuming the Earth's resources. And we're no hippies. It's not, but they are getting that message from people, and we need to bake that into our marketing, that we can influence people and we can steer them in a direction that is more positive than just the possession of another material good, a new dress, new suit, new shoes. There's more to it than that, and that's baking in, as Amy Jo says, the serotonin, that we're doing good. We're doing good. It's good to be here. We're part of a community. We're part of a group. AI and chatbots, we hear doing that. They're coming, and they're coming quickly.
Yeah.
And I think some of the big companies will be looking at what's gone on with Facebook and Russia's interference in elections and going, I want that for my marketing.
Absolutely.
But we've got to bake in the right things.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Totally agree there. Okay, so what we're going to do is Iain and Amy Jo have put together 3 top tips for the future of technology for marketers. We're just going to get them up on the screen now, and then I'll pass over to Amy Jo to talk through her top 3 main pointers and takeaways for the audience.
Sure. So for the first one here, in recapping and kind of thinking through our conversation today, it's important, I believe, that we start to be more intentional with our brand's digital footprint. So we hear a lot about carbon footprints out there and the implications and impacts that they have. Imagine the same type of scenario, but your brand's digital footprint and what it's doing to the online space and the long-term impact, knowing that what is shared online, photos, posts, comments, impacts behavior offline. So it's another way to kind of flip your thoughts and kind of audit what is our footprint and what are we leaving out there. Is it litter? Is it beneficial? Is it helping the health of the internet, or is it actually a detriment to the internet? So that is my number one, and really starting to kind of think, and one way is to frame it as similar to a carbon footprint that we always hear about and the impact to the physical environment. Think of that online as a digital footprint. Number two is not forgetting the importance of humanizing your brand and that concept that people do connect with people, not logos. And as we move more and more toward AI being embraced, I think this is going to be more and more of a differentiating factor for brands and really having that human touch and compassion. So that is number two. And then thirdly, as we're developing our strategies, as we are thinking through the future of our marketing efforts, when we develop these value propositions and campaigns, I think it's important to keep in mind that currently our consumers, our audience, they're equally fatigued and addicted to technology right now. So knowing that and having that information top of mind, how does that shift our approach, or actually just maybe reframe how we're going to get to where we want to go, and what value we can provide them, knowing that the fatigue is, we all feel it ourselves because we are all consumers, but also that addiction it can't be denied, that we are constantly on our phones and we're getting hits of dopamine. We're getting that feel-good sensation when we see likes and comments, and it's human nature. But knowing that there's fatigue and addiction there, how can we craft our campaigns, our propositions to be more helpful than not in that scenario?
Okay, and over to Iain now for his 3 takeaways.
Yeah, very simple really. Be responsible with your customer data. That sort of covers across a whole raft of sins. Because we know so much about our customers, doesn't mean to say we should be using all of that data all of the time. We should be responsible for it and take care of it, so it doesn't get lost or stolen, but be responsible with it. Don't do things that people aren't expecting. Don't scare them because we know so much about them. Facebook particularly has lots of information that it can do lots of things with, but it doesn't. It just hides them away. It doesn't let everybody know. Mistakes aren't life sentences. They're life lessons. It's really simple. Try and do new things with your data and make some mistakes. They are lessons. They are things that we should take away from our databases and learn not to do again or do more of. There is an opportunity to just try new things. Be surprised how people like new things. We seem to have moved away from what would be my parents' era of I like the same old things every day. People like new things every day. I think we're in an adventure part of the world with all the changes that are going on. And finally, one of my key ingredients for any data is not all customers are equal. There is a thing that all customers are equal, everybody's equal. I'm afraid that's not true. We're not all equal. We all want different things. We all like different things. We all like to do things differently. And some of us really aren't prepared to pay, and some of us are prepared to pay premiums. So we need to really continually delve into the data to identify segments and what will turn them on, make them happy, and convert them into loyal customers.
Fabulous. Thank you, Iain. So that summarises our discussion on the future of technology is the future of humanity. I think we've got some very important takeaways from that session, but most of all that we need to remember to humanise our communications, and also that we need to remain responsible and empathetic, no matter how far we go into AI, chatbots and algorithms. I'd like to say a massive thank you to Amy Jo Martin and Iain Lovatt for joining us today. Thank you so much to both of you. And also a big thank you to our audience for attending the session. So up next at Join Digital, we have invited our partners, Throttle Onboarding, to the virtual stage to discuss how you implement an identity resolution solution. If this topic is of interest, make sure you stick around. To join the session, as a reminder, all you need to do is click on your unique joining link, which you should receive in an email about 10 minutes before the session. So keep an eye out for that email. If you'd like to opt out of those emails, of course, there is that option. You can see it at the footer of the email. So we hope you enjoyed the session. We hope to see you in about 15 to 20 minutes. Hope you're enjoying the day so far, and we'll be talking with you soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.